Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. In her latest young adult novel, Sisters in the Wind, Anishinaabe writer Angeline Boulley weaves together another page-turning mystery. It's her third novel in a loosely connected series. All three have made it to the New York Times bestseller list. The book follows 18-year-old Lucy Smith, who's on the run after a series of foster homes. Along the way, she encounters friends, family, foes, and a connection to her Anishinaabe identity. Angeline Boulley joins us to talk about it after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Brian Bull, sitting in for Antonia Gonzalez. This year's New York Fashion Week made history by featuring the first Native American designer. The show coincided with the first of its kind Indigenous New York Fashion Week. Reporter Carol Ann Duro has more.
Jamie Okuma, Shoshone Bannock, Wailaki, and a member of the La Jolla Band of Indians, is known for her intricate beadwork and clothing designs. At New York Fashion Week, Okuma showcased pieces adorned with graphics of dentalium shells, flowers, elk teeth, and butterflies. The models walked in dresses made of silk, bamboo, and cotton. Okuma is the very first Native American designer to be included in New York Fashion Week. Nearby, the inaugural Indigenous New York Fashion Week was hosted by Relative Arts, an Indigenous fashion community space. The show featured 25 Indigenous artists from all over the world. Kinsale Drake, who is Diné and the founder of the Indian Girls Book Club, modeled for the runway.
The energy was just something that was so exciting and buzzy, and it felt like you can't erase us. We're here, and now we're also in New York on Lenape land.
Drake points out how Fashion Week has long included tribal designs.
We saw recently a rise of Americana or Western fashion, which derives from these Southwest aesthetics that are Indigenous.
Details about the next Indigenous New York Fashion Week are still to come. For National Native News, I'm Carol Ann Duro.
A sculpture honoring the last chief of the Wenatchee tribe has been delivered and erected at a developing art installation in Wenatchee, Washington. The piece depicts Pisquosa chief John Harmelt, also known as Crow Song, and is made of repurposed metal parts. Sculptor Judd Turner of Eugene, Oregon, was asked to do it for the Tribal Council of Wenatchee, which shows Chief Harmelt on horseback. Turner says it's the most meaningful public piece he's ever done, but he didn't take the invitation lightly when he first talked to city officials about the sculpture.
I said, I'm a white guy, right? You're asking me to do a tribal subject for a tribe, and I want to make sure that you know that I'm non-native and that is okay with the tribe and that you're aware of that. And he said, oh, yeah, we understand that. And I said, I can only do this with tribal oversight and guidance. I'm handling somebody else's cultural traditions, and I want to do that as carefully and respectfully as I can.
More pieces will be installed at Wenatchee's Memorial Park to create Pisquosa Plaza. These will be done by Swede Albert of the Colville Confederated Tribes. His pieces will be interpretive signs featuring animals relevant to Wenatchee legends.
One of the stories is about two different bears. So I already made a grizzly bear, and then there's a little black bear that I'm making that's going along with it. And then the coyote and the salmon, they go together in one story. There's also a two owls sisters story, and I have two owls made for that. One more fabricated story that I'm making, and it's for the Wenatchee peoples. They asked me to do like a representation of a basket, like a berry basket. They were really prominent in basket making and weaving, and that's a lot of the artifacts that are still left.
As a Wenatchee descendant, Albert says it's deeply meaningful for him to work on this project. The Pisquosa Plaza's dedication ceremony will be held October 13th. And on this day in 2003, the Canadian Supreme Court handed down a landmark ruling which said the Métis people of current-day Ontario are a distinct Indigenous people with their own customs, identity, and traditions well before Canada became a country and Ontario became a province. The 10-year legal battle started with the Métis father and son, Steve and Roddy Pally, who refused to plead guilty to hunting moose without a license because of their tribal identities. The ruling empowered Métis people across Canada, and September 19th is called Pally Day. This is National Native News. I'm Brian Bull.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Support by AARP. AARP creates and connects people to unique tools and programs, helps conserve personal resources, and tackles issues that matter most to individuals, families, and communities. More at aarp.org.
Support by Sonosky Chambers Law, championing tribal sovereignty and Native American rights since 1976. From opioids litigation to treaty rights to tribal self-governance. With offices in Washington, D.C., New Mexico, California, and Alaska. Sonosky Chambers Law.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. The Ojibwe author of New York Times bestsellers Firekeeper's Daughter and Warrior Girl Unearthed is out with her third novel. Sisters in the Wind by Angeline Boulley is also a bestseller. The new mystery thriller follows 18-year-old Lucy Smith as she ages out of the foster care system. She is slow to trust others and stays ready to run at a moment's notice. Survival skills that help her as she runs from secrets in her past. She encounters two Native protectors who introduce her to her Anishinaabe identity. Together, Lucy confronts her past and fights for the future and family that she's always wanted. Boulley weaves together themes of Indigenous identity, justice, and family through compelling characters and sophisticated storytelling. Sisters in the Wind is on our Native bookshelf, and Angeline Boulley is our guest today. Of course, listeners, you can join the conversation too. Call 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now on Zoom from Kansas City while traveling is Angeline Boulley. She is a best-selling author who just released her latest novel, Sisters in the Wind. It is the third installment of the acclaimed Firekeeper's Daughter young adult book series. She is a member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. Angeline, welcome back to Native America Calling, and congratulations. 3 in a row. How does it feel?
Well, bonjour, first of all, and then, yes, miigwech. It feels fantastic. The third book, I'm not going to lie, it was probably my hardest one to write.
Bonjour to you as well, Angeline. Well, let's talk more about the new book. And what's interesting is it is an interquel, which means the timeline occurs in between your first two novels of the series. Can you give us an overview of the story?
Sure. 18-year-old Lucy, she's aged out of the foster care system, and she's working at a diner, but always looking over her shoulder. And a Native attorney who helps kids, former foster children, find their way back home if they would like. He approaches her, and his name is Jamie. And I'm not giving away a spoiler to say that a pipe bomb goes off and lands Lucy in the hospital, where she must depend on the help and kindness of Jamie and his friend, but not a friend, Donis.
Okay, now, Angeline, Lucy continues with your tradition of these very strong young women protagonists, but they're also to some measure flawed. We saw Donis in Firekeeper's Daughter, and now the second book, Warrior Girl Unearthed, Perry was the protagonist. Tell us more about Lucy. Is she based on any one person in particular? How did you come up with her as a character?
She wasn't based on anyone in particular. And I liken it to, in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, when the writing goes on the screen before the story starts, and it talks about how rebels have acquired the blueprints to, the Death Star. And then out of that one sentence about rebels acquiring the blueprints, we get Andor, 2 seasons of what I think was spectacular storytelling, and Rogue One. And so Lucy is mentioned not by name, but Lily is talking with Donis about a half sister who lives with her dad in, downstate. So Lucy's mentioned in the story, but not by name. So there's this half sister of Lily's that's out there. And I thought it was a great way to connect. I wanted to tell a story about the Indian Child Welfare Act.
Angeline, I had no idea that you are such a big Star Wars fan. Wow, science fiction. That's awesome. Okay. Um, well, yeah, I mean, let's talk. All of the themes in your books, they focus on a timely and a pressing Native American issue that we're very familiar with on these shows. We talk about these kinds of things all the time. NAGPRA, MMIWP, intergenerational trauma. And now, of course, Sisters in the Wind revolves around the Indian Child Welfare Act and the foster care system. What led you down this path?
I was really alarmed, as many people were, about the Supreme Court case, Howland v. Brackeen, that was decided in 2023. Now, the Supreme Court ruled in our favor by upholding the lower court decision, which had said, yes, ICWA is the law of the land. But Justices Alito and Thomas, they dissented and each wrote a dissent opinion. And in it, I think they were like trying to provide breadcrumbs of, okay, to people who are opposed to ICWA, here's some breadcrumbs that, if a case were filed this way or that way, or, and so we just know that even though we won this fight, that the battle's not over. It is, unfortunately, it it's a marathon and constant vigilance. So I just wanted more people who are non-native, who can be powerful allies for us too. I wanted them to know more about ICWA and why it's so important, and when it's followed properly, it does exactly as the law intended. And we know that Native children and teens have better outcomes in school, behavioral health, when they're connected to their culture and their community.
Sounds like you did a lot of research for this book.
Yes, my books are pretty heavy on the research in terms of, I read the original 1974 Senate subcommittee hearings that led to the passage of ICWA in 78. And then I also read like the 30 plus amicus briefs that were filed in that recent Supreme Court case. So, I wanted to read, the arguments for ICWA and the arguments against. This battle, we need to know what the enemy is thinking. We need to know, how they're shaping their arguments.
One of the aspects that I really admire about your books is that they are a very entertaining way to learn about real issues that we face as Native American people. And I always am curious, how do you balance that challenge of educating your readers about facts about us as Native people, but at the same time, you still need to weave a really good story. You still need to get listeners to keep turning the pages. Is that tough to get that balance just right?
Well, I wouldn't say it's easy, but I have had some success with it. But it's really that, yeah, you don't want to be preachy. You don't want to have this a reader feeling like they're reading a textbook, um, because the law is about people. And the best storytelling is when you connect your humanity to, this imaginary character who's going through these circumstances. And so any way that you can bring the reader along and to have them be emotionally invested in, this character. And for Lucy, a great storytelling technique is, Lucy's new to learning about ICWA. She had didn't really know about it. So as Jamie is, explaining things to Lucy, that's how the reader gets brought into it too. So that's a pretty common storytelling technique is to have the protagonist be learning right along with the reader, which is something I did in Warrior Girl Unearthed, where Perry has to read about NAGPRA and she's ready to, break into some museums and do like some five-fingered repatriations. And her boss, Cooper Turtle, is like, nope, you got to learn how to walk before you can fly. So, I just like being able to introduce readers who are native and non-native and from all walks of life to educate about the issues that are so important to us.
Well, going back to just the factual information and the research you did, the people that you talked to when preparing for the writing, there's one part in the book where Lucy is talking with like a foster care person, personal social worker, somebody, and that person advises her, don't say that you're native because it just makes it more complicated. It just makes the whole process more lengthy and complicated. That sounds like something that you probably were told or you learned from somebody who knows the system really well.
Oh yeah, I heard from multiple sources that social workers and court personnel who are not trained well on ICWA, they view it as a paperwork burden and a hassle, and so yeah, they do discourage. Some uh, discourage Native children from disclosing that.
Angeline, Sisters in the Wind, there's a content warning for child sex trafficking, child abuse, teen pregnancy, explosions and bombing, anti-indigenous racism and colorism, gun violence, death with mentions of police brutality, etc. Do you get any pushback from parents with regard to some of the content?
No, I haven't. Maybe I will with this one, maybe not. But um, you know, my publisher is Macmillan, and we have an age recommendation on the cover of the book, ages 14 and up. I wouldn't hesitate to hand, my books to any high school student. And I would say, I was always one of those kids who was reading, above my grade level. And so I think when it comes to offering the book to someone younger than high school, I think that's where, yeah, a parent or a trusted guardian or auntie, should probably take a look at the book first. And but I
All
think
right, we're
if
going to
kids
take a short break.
want to read, they
We'll
should.
be right back. The new album by Kuik is the band's latest evolution of their unique funk jazz fusion that also incorporates traditional songs and Tlingit lyrics. We'll hear new tunes from them, as well as the neo-soul band Earth Surface People. That's on the next Native America Calling.
My name is Tammy, and I'm a member of the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians. Smoking gave me heart disease. I used to think of cigarette smoking as something that only affected me. Then at just 44 years old, I had to look into my mom's eyes on the way into emergency heart surgery and tell her, Mommy, I promise I won't make you bury me. My tip is, think about the people in your life who love you. They go through the pain too, maybe even more than you do.
The people you love are worth quitting for. You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. A message from the CDC.
You are listening to Native America Calling. We're talking with author Angeline Boulley today about her latest novel, Sisters in the Wind. Are you familiar with Angeline's work? Have you already read Sisters in the Wind? Give us a call. Let us know what you think of the third installment of the Firekeeper's Daughter series. We're at 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. And we already have a caller on the line. This is Bird, who is listening in northern Arizona on KUYI Hopi Radio. Good morning, Bird. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for taking my call. I am a huge fan of Angeline and her work. I read Firekeeper's Daughter and her other books as well. And I started this book last night, and I just love the continuing themes that are very pressing within our Indigenous communities, and just how it really opens up those conversations and the accessibility to have these types of books, especially for our young Native people and working in the education system. You know, we do have students that are getting close to that aging out of being in the system, and just all the different factors and issues that are really present in her books that create this important conversations that we need within our communities, especially with our youth. And I'm very excited to see the returning characters of Donis and Jamie. I was really curious of what was going to happen after Firekeeper's Daughter, and just the continuing themes. And I'm just really appreciative of these accessible novels for our people. So thank you so much for your work, and I'm very excited to finish this, which I probably will this evening. I'm very close to finishing it. So thank you.
Right on, Bird. Thank you for calling in. Angeline, please respond.
Oh, miigwech, Bird. Yeah, people really wanted to know more about Jamie after reading Firekeeper's Daughter. And I knew, I wanted the second story to be about Nagpra. And so, I knew I wanted one of the twins to be the main character in my second book. So yeah, that 10-year leap. And I would get, every time I do a book event, I'll get readers who want to know what happened to Jamie, and so I knew I wanted to do that interquill, which is a pretty cool way of how you said that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I like to think of it as a prequel to a sequel, right? Like an interquel. It's kind of
Yeah.
interesting how that all works out. Also, Angeline, you just mentioned like people who come up to you on book tours and things like that. And do people ever offer ideas for your books? Like, well, this is what I would like to see Donis do, and this is what I want to happen to Jamie. And if so, do you ever take any of that advice?
I don't get that advice, but when I was doing book events for Warrior Girl, and I knew my third book would be about Ikwa, I would mention, I'm working on my third book. I'm going to focus on Indian Child Welfare Act. And I would get people who attended the event come up to me and say that they were a former foster kid, or that they were, current foster parents. And so I was able to develop some really good contacts and able to call on them for interviews for my
Angeline,
research. Yep.
great, great. Let's go back to the phones. This is Cassie, who listens to the show online. She is in Nashville, Tennessee. Hello, Cassie. Thank you for calling in today.
Hi, Sean. This is a wonderful, wonderful program. I listen to you almost every day. I just want to thank Angelina for writing this third book. I have read the two previous books. I was in the foster system before the ICWA program even began. So it's very close to how I feel about what's going on today. So I'm looking forward to the third book, and many of the things that the young woman has gone through, I personally experienced. So thank you, Angelina, for writing this third book, and I look forward to reading it. Thank you.
Angeline, it sounds like this is
miigwech.
a healing experience for a lot of readers here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say miigwech for her wanting to read it, and just that's always my when I meet a reader that has a similar background, I just want to know, did I get it right? Did I make you proud? Did I, have I been informative enough without revealing things we don't want revealed? So there's always those questions that I have for readers.
Now, of course, this book is a work of fiction. It's also a suspense thriller. But going back to this whole theme of foster care, some readers could interpret it as an overall scathing commentary on the foster care system in general and its negative impacts on all kids, not just natives, because there are other characters in the book who are non-native who are also struggling in foster care. Do you get any feedback on that?
No, I really haven't. I did hear back from one former foster parent who was like, "I'm glad that not all that Lucy did have one, positive experience in foster care. There are good people who are doing it for the right reasons." Um, so yeah, uh, it was good to hear that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, another interesting component of your writing, the book is composed of 4 parts, and each part begins with a short paragraph on scientific facts about fire. What do you want the reader to take from that? Is there symbolism there?
Yeah, I looked at the symbolism of fire being this like chaotic force, and then these kids are just kind of tossed to the winds after the chaos. So I thought it was really interesting, the 4 stages of a wildfire, and that I could make it the analogy to kids getting into foster care. The how prevention is so key, and there are things you can do that can keep the fire from spreading. And so, yeah, there was a lot of uh, parallels that I wanted to draw upon.
Now, like the first 2 books, Sisters in the Wind features fictional characters from your own tribal community, Angeline. How have these characters and stories evolved since you first started this series? It's been, what, 5 years now?
Yeah, like they live in my mind. There's this whole, Firekeepers universe in my mind, and so I'll get thoughts about, oh, uh, knowing about Granny June, or different things that are happening to characters that I haven't written yet. Um, so I don't know. My mind is kind of a scary yet pretty cool place to be.
Now, as the previous caller mentioned, readers will recognize 2 characters, Donis and Jamie, from the first book. And of course, anybody who reads that book just instantly gets captivated by them and their relationship. What can you tell us about their relationship in this new book without revealing any spoilers?
Yeah, and at the ending of Firekeeper's Daughter, when Donis chooses herself, Jamie wants her to come with him and help him find his community, and and she chooses herself and says, that no, you need to do that work your own. I can't, um, if I were to help you, I would be suppressing the things that I want to do, and so I think there need to be more books for teen readers, especially where the girl chooses herself. And so yeah, it's 5 years later, and we meet Jamie, and he has done exactly what she had wanted for him, was to kind of get himself straightened out, and um and not be so much of a hot mess.
Another recurring theme in the book is the idea that we can love imperfect people. Why do you feel that's important?
Because each one of us is imperfect, um, and sometimes that's maybe the most interesting parts of us. Um, but just because we're flawed human beings, it doesn't mean that we don't deserve love, and that we can love people who are flawed. It's important to have healthy boundaries, and to know what the what things are not healthy for you. But you know imperfect people deserve love and are worthy of love, and um, but again, a healthy love with boundaries and clear communication.
Mm-hmm. I mentioned earlier how there are numerous characters in the book who are non-native, and I was especially interested in like some of the other kids who Lucy met while she was in foster care. And I'm curious to know, were you looking to broaden your scope beyond only native themes in Sisters in the Wind? by bringing in some of those other characters and even some non-native plot elements as well?
Yeah, I think that the overreaching goal of um, having readers learn more about the foster care system, um, and how traumatic it can be for any uh, any child or teen that's in it.
Angeline, I saw you last year at a literary festival in North Carolina. You were a keynote and you talked a little bit about plans for a Netflix series of Firekeeper's Daughter and that they were placed on hold. Can you share any updates with our listeners on that project?
Sure. I do believe that someday Firekeeper's Daughter will be on the screen, but it won't be through Netflix. And my film option with the Obama's production company, Higher Ground, that ran out its option period. And so the rights have reverted back to me. And, you get paid during that option period. Uh, uh, not as lucrative as the outright purchase when the project's going to get greenlit and go into pre-production. But I'm glad that the rights are back with me and that I got paid handsomely to learn some really important lessons. No one will love my intellectual property the way that I do, and so I need to be in the writer's room, and I need to be in the room where decisions get made.
Angela, talk a little bit about the editing process that you have for when you write your books, because you were on Good Morning America yesterday morning, and that was an awesome interview. I had a chance to watch it, and the interviewer asked you, like, what's your advice to aspiring writers? And you said, just write, just get it out there, just put it on the page, and then it's the editing process where you really fine tune everything and kind of figure out how all it works. So, how do you go through that? What's your process?
I usually start with, an idea, the issue that I want to focus on, and then how I might do like weave in that mystery thriller and, who would be the best character for that. So yeah, I kind of do a lot of thinking and jotting things down on paper. Um, I, kind of story graph my ideas using like the medicine wheel because I write in a 4-act structure. So I'm always like doing my plot points, in a graphic uh, design. So yeah, and then I start writing, and that's about it. And it just feels like I never I just write, and then I'm constantly revising too. And but because I have to I have to get it written, my books have to get written within a year, so that there's time for production and so I can be published every other year.
Now, do you have a specific set schedule during the day when you're at like a specific time of day that you write, or do you just write whenever you feel inspired? How do you just, because that seems like, again, like a 1 year timeline. And you mentioned earlier, like that, it's a shorter timeline than you wrote the first book, and you definitely must have to really understand time management and how to budget that time so you get the project finished when it needs to be done.
Well, I wasn't very good at time management with Sisters in the Wind, and I ended up like pulling a lot of all-nighters that would turn out to be like like staying up for 2 nights and 2 days. And I don't know. I don't recommend it, but it worked for me. So with my fourth book that I'm working on, I'm trying to be more disciplined about writing from noon to 5 every day, and then if the ideas are still coming, I can keep writing into the night. But trying to be more consistent about having my laptop with me and uh, writing every day.
Now, of course, this is your third book, and it's also the third one to become a New York Times bestseller. Do you know what it is that connects your work with readers? What do you think it is that people just really like about your writing and all these characters and these stories that you've created?
Well, I think that there are a lot of non-natives that are really curious about us, and I think literature is like the best. I mean, for storytelling to that we're so we're not a monolith, and so the more books, the more stories, the more Native authors that are telling those stories, I think it's really helpful. Yeah.
The number to join our conversation today is 1-800-996-2848. We have the phone lines open. We have producers waiting for your call at our Albuquerque, New Mexico studio. So what are you waiting for? Maybe you have read some of Angeline Boulley's books. Maybe you've read this most recent one, Sisters in the Wind. It came out just earlier this month on September 2nd. Maybe you've read some of the previous novels that she's written. Maybe you yourself are an aspiring writer and you just are interested in learning more about what it takes to be a writer, what it takes to write a novel, and not only a novel, but a best-selling novel like what Angeline Boulley has done, not once, not twice, but 3 times. You like a little bit of advice or maybe a pep talk just to get that computer out and just start writing and sharing your dream and whatever it is that you want to share with the public. You can do that. Just give us a call, 1-800-996-2848. We have Angeline Boulley here, and she's always just a wonderful guest to have on the show. So giving with her time and her gift of writing. So please take advantage of this opportunity. Call now. Call and join our conversation. Speak with Angeline Boulley live today here on Native America Calling. The number again, 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. What are you waiting for? Grab that phone. Give us a call. 1-800-99-NATIVE.
The annual Indian Nations Conservation Alliance National Conference in Las Vegas, October 14th to the 16th, is a movement. Natural resource management, conservation and land stewardship, agricultural technology and innovation. Internationally acclaimed regenerative rancher Alejandro Carrillo will speak on ancestral land practices and sustainable food systems. Info and registration at inca-tcd.org. Inca supports this show.
Thank you for listening today. This is Native America Calling. Our Native bookshelf feature today is Sisters in the Wind by New York Times best-selling author Angeline Boulley. There is still plenty of time for you to join this conversation with your comments and questions for Angeline. Give us a call at 1-800-996-2848. That's also 1-800-99-NATIVE. Angeline, all of your books, in addition to the characters and the stories and the plots, are also known for amazing artwork on the covers. What can you tell us about the artwork on Sisters in the Wind?
Oh, Emily Kiwagashig is the artist who did the cover for Sisters. And my publisher was so impressed with her that they had her do a brand new cover for the paperback release of Warrior Girl, which came out in May of this year. So yeah. Her work is so beautiful.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Just great choice of color, good content. Angeline, listeners will also be excited to learn that you have a 4th book now planned for the series. What can you tell us about it?
Pipelines and man camps. Yeah.
Pipelines and man camps.
Following my, I always follow a different element. So element of fire, earth, air, and so yes, water. We women in my community, we get our water teachings and, helps us to be healthy. But what happens when the water is toxic? And so, yeah, Line 5 pipeline, it's like a 645-mile pipeline, and 5 miles of it goes underneath the Mackinac Bridge. And there's been 33 leaks that we know of. And yeah, it's bad news.
So, Angeline, like your other books, this one will draw on a core element of the earth as a theme.
Yes.
Water. Fascinating.
Water.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will be eagerly waiting. I also want to add, and you've been on this show before, and of course, we know you have a strong background in education and education policy, and it's big in the news now, the push to scrutinize books that don't always fit into a particular mold. Do you think about that at all when you release your books, whether they might be excluded from school reading lists or anything like that because they don't align with certain values or priorities that some school districts and some states might have?
I don't, I'm concerned about it, but I just try to write the best stories that I can, and to do so with respect and care for that, the youngest reader. So, yeah, that part is not in my control. And so all I can do is speak to, um, parents. Yeah, a parent has a right to say what their child can and cannot read, but that same parent doesn't have the right to tell my child what they can and cannot read. And so I just think the conversation about um, parental rights, it needs to be flipped of, if there are books you don't want your child to read, then opt them out of it.
Hmm.
But you have no right to opt out entire grades of children from accessing books. We know books save lives. We know that when children and teens see themselves reflected in the pages of a book, that it changes how they view the world and their place in it.
Let's go back to the phones. This is Alex listening in Albuquerque, New Mexico on KUNM radio. Hello, Alex. You were on the
Hi,
air.
Sean. Hi, Sean and Angeline. I'm actually calling on behalf of my daughter. She's a young author, and she won the Children's Book of the Year award a few years back. And she's half Navajo. Well, she's just calling. She's read Warrior Girl Unearthed, and she's just calling for some advice because her second book is about to come out. In terms of she published with a small publishing house, but should she get an agent and look for a bigger house or self-publish, or what did you do when you first got started?
I really wanted my books to have the widest market reach available, so I knew that I wanted to go with a big five publisher. Um, so I did get an agent. Um, and so I just encourage people to listen to podcasts about the publishing process, and go on social media and look at different authors that you love. Look and see who they're represented by, and there's some really good resources that are available for learning about who might be a good agent for you.
Angeline, that call from Alex reminds me that, of course, you're on a book tour right now, and I know you go to a lot of schools and you make presentations and you meet with aspiring writers. Talk a little bit more about some of the schools you've visited and just some of the other interesting people that you've met that have been inspired by your books.
Well, I was really proud that my book Sisters came out September 2nd, and I was able to be at Oneida Nation High School near Green Bay for my very first book event for the Sisters book tour. So what that was kind of like a dream come true of being able to, launch the book at um, at a native high school. So that's going to be special for me forever.
What are some other venues that you really enjoy to do book readings and other events? Bookstores, community centers, where else do you go?
Yeah, I love those indie booksellers, uh, and I also love going to community colleges. I really like talking with college students, especially in community college. And there was one event I did, and this guy came up to me and said it was the first novel he'd read since high school. And he was kind of an older gentleman. So I was like, wow, it was really neat that my book was his reintroduction to reading fiction. I also want to give a shout out. I have another book that just came out. I have a short story in an anthology edited by Cynthia Leidick Smith, and it's called Legendary Fry Bread Drive-In. And it's like a whole bunch of Native authors, and we each contribute a story to this legendary Fry Bread Drive-In. So some of my favorite authors like Darcy Little Badger and Brian Young, Andrea Rogers, oh gosh, Jen Ferguson, just um, uh, so many great. And the audiobook has native voice actors, indigenous actors reading the stories. So I just, that's another book that I really highly recommend, not just because I'm in it, but because it's good storytelling.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And for listeners who are interested in learning more about legendary Fry Bread Drive-In, we actually did a show just about last month, Friday, August 29th, 2025. It was part of the menu with Andy Murphy, and the legendary Fry Bread Drive-In was featured on that. So if you go to NativeAmericanCalling.com, you can check out a recording of that show. And Angeline, going back to that story you just told us about that gentleman who said he hadn't read a book in many, many years, that's got to be like the biggest compliment you can receive as a writer, to know that you inspired somebody to take that step and pick up a book and read it.
Yeah, it really is. And then I love when a high school teacher says that a reluctant reader couldn't wait to get through my book and was like, wanted to talk about it and jump ahead on the reading. That is like the best thing to hear too, because that's exactly who you want to reach, are those teens that maybe they're not excited about reading because they haven't seen themselves or their family in a book before.
Angeline, what books are you reading right now?
Oh gosh. Um uh I just finished, and I'm so embarrassed that it took me so long to finish reading Andrea Rogers' Man-Made Monsters. Oh my gosh, that book is a masterpiece. Um, I know Darcy Little Badger has a book coming out. Byron Graves, gosh, I'll just read anything that's coming out. Stephen Graham Jones, I enjoy reading him. And then really anything Cherie Dimaline writes, I'm there for it.
Mm-hmm. What other ideas do you have for books beyond the series that we're talking about today? Any thoughts for other types of books? Maybe even expanding beyond fiction into nonfiction or something like that?
I think it might be I think it might be interesting to kind of write a book that's part memoir and part like the craft of writing, because I've been a different author for each book. And then too, I think the stories behind the stories are pretty interesting. So that's kind of one idea, but I do want to start writing for an adult audience too. I'd like to try that.
We always ask you about how Native literature is progressing. Do you think about the strength of the work being put out by Native authors today, and just in your lifetime, how has it changed? What's been the overall impact, you think, of just Native people going out and getting published?
I think we've always had great storytellers. We've always had great authors, or writers. We just weren't the ones getting the book deals. So I think the quality of storytelling has always been there, but it's publishing recognizing that we are more than a genre. We are more than, we can, write our monster stories. We can write romance. We can write, just as you can't contain us to like a monolith of a people, you can't contain us to one, literary genre.
What amazes me too is just the power that you have as a writer. And of course, you are now a prominent literary figure across Indian country, outside of Indian country. And as a writer, you have that power, you have that platform. And I'm curious to know, how do you hold yourself accountable to your own tribal community and other Native communities that might be featured in your books? Do you think about that in terms of now you are also a spokesperson and you are speaking on behalf of so many other people, so many other Native people? and sharing these stories?
Well, I try not to, my views are my own. But I have my cousin Deb, who she's kind of, even though we're similar age, she's kind of my Aunt Teddy. So I know that she would like kick my butt if I just, I don't know. I always feel if I can justify if she asks me any question about why I included something in my book, either her or my best friend Barb, if they question me, I feel like I need to be able to justify it, and if not, then maybe that part shouldn't be in a story. So I hold myself accountable to the strong Nishquerug in my community who, they'll let me know what's what.
You mentioned Aunt Teddy, so for Angeline Boulley fans, they will recognize Aunt Teddy from your earlier books. And to hear you talk, Angeline, when you describe these characters, you kind of go back and forth between family members and friends in your real life, and then some of the characters that you have created. And it almost sounds like there's kind of a gray area. Sometimes you're talking about them like they're real people, and you'll intermix them in conversations with actual people. I think that's really cool how you're like really invested in these characters.
Yeah, like they're just this group of friends that I'm always talking about.
um, how do you, what happens? And I hear other writers say, and you talked earlier about how it took you longer to write Sisters in the Wind. What happens when you just kind of hit a stumbling block, a hurdle, and your creative inspiration is just kind of put to a halt for whatever reason? How do you get past that? How do you jumpstart your inspiration in a situation like that?
If I'm really stuck in in the story, I leap towards writing the next scene that I know for sure. So I don't feel like I have to limit myself to writing in a linear fashion. I can hop around and write the scenes that I'm most interested in writing, because a lot of times that's going to help inform, oh, okay, then this needs to happen in the chapter in between to get from here to there.
Mm-hmm. When you go on book tours, do audiences connect with these issues that we're talking about and the issues that you profile in these stories, ICWA and NAGPRA, and just the heaviness, the seriousness of some of what is at stake in these stories? Or do you find yourself having to kind of re-explain what these issues mean and their significance?
No, I don't do explaining. I offer opinions of how they can make their voices heard. For example, with NAGPRA, the biggest voice are people who are alumni of universities that have Native collections. Alumni are the most powerful voice to contact the board of trustees or regents for that particular college and find out what their plan is for repatriating their collections. Um, so just letting allies know these are the steps that you can do. And for example, whenever you hear a land acknowledgement, whenever I do an event and they do a land acknowledgement, I always say, okay, land acknowledgements are often meaningful but rarely impactful. And so I challenge everybody who's heard the land acknowledgement to go out, seek out another Native creative, another Native author, uh, buy their book or request it from the library. Costs you nothing to rate it and review it online and recommend it to 5 people. That is gold to, authors out there. So, because publishing is a business and we do have to prove that our stories have a market. And so I like to challenge people in those ways.
Angeline, we are out of time. We're going to have to wrap up this conversation. I'm sorry. I wish we could talk longer, but I appreciate you taking the time today to share your gift and your craft with our listeners. And when we spoke earlier, you said that you are happy right now. You are living your best life. And I just want to wish you a continued course down that path. So proud and so happy
Oh,
for you.
miigwech, and stories are good medicine.
All right. Big thanks to Angeline Boulley for joining us here today on Native America Calling. Join us next week for another lineup of conversations about Indigenous issues and topics. And big thanks to our hardworking crew in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and our parent company, Koahnic Broadcast Corporation in Anchorage, Alaska. Have a safe weekend. I'm Sean Spruce.
Support provided by Amerind. Amerind is 100% tribally owned and partners with tribes and their businesses to provide affordable commercial insurance coverage, protect tribal sovereignty, and strengthen Native American communities by helping to keep dollars in Indian country. Information about property, liability, commercial auto, and workers' comp available at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com. Program support by AmeriCorps Vista, where you can kickstart your career and help others in your community. With AmeriCorps Vista, you can serve in an office setting and address issues of poverty while gaining career experience and building your leadership skills. Learn more by visiting americorps.gov/vista today. That's AMERICORPS.gov/VISTA.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.